I'm sitting with four amazing individuals, two who I've been back to Europe with myself, personally seeing their battlefields, their foxholes, their airfields, and it's been a hell of a journey. It's an adrenaline rush that I never knew could exist outside the military, going back with some of these guys to Europe. And I think I'll start off with my buddy Ed Cottrell here in the blue sweatshirt, waving to you all. I believe he'll be 102 in a couple months. Yeah. And Ed was a P-47 pilot with the 9th Air Force and flew 65 missions during World War II, two of which he nearly died big time during the Battle of the Bulge. And Ed and I have been back to Europe, I think, maybe 5 times, and we found his old airfield, we found the crash sites of his friends, with the grave site of his roommate, Ted Smith, buried in Holland. And Ed, tell us a little bit about yourself and any of these future officers who might want to get into aviation and how that maybe shaped the rest of your life.
I don't know where to start, but when I was in my junior year in college, I was told that I was going to be drafted. So if I wanted to get into a special branch, to do it very quickly. So I thought, well, I'll go down. I'd like to fly in the Navy. I was fortunate to have a pilot's license between my freshman and sophomore year through the courtesy of the government. So I went to the Navy, and I passed their flight test, and across the street was the Army Air Corps. And I thought, well, let me go over and see what they have to say. So I went to the Army Air Corps, and I passed their test. I went to the Navy, back to the Navy, and I said, if I join you, when do you go? Call me. And they said, you go tomorrow. The Army Air Corps said, go back to college, and we'll call you when we're ready. Well, that's a no-brainer. So I went back to school. And the start of my second semester of my senior year, I was called, went through flight training, graduated in April of 1944, went to Wendover Field, Utah, and there I was going to transition into the plane I would fly in combat. And I walked onto the airfield, and there's the most beautiful plane you could ever see, a brand new P-47 Thunderbolt. Yeah. And I looked at that plane, and I thought, boy, that's going to be great to fly. And I can tell you right now, if it was not for the Pratt & Whitney engine and the people from Republic that made that plane, I would not be here today. That plane saved my life. And I'm forever grateful for the people that made that P-47 Thunderbolt. I don't know whether I answered your question or not.
Don't worry, we got 40 minutes. You know, it's funny because Mr. Shipe here, right here, was with the 97th Infantry Division, which is a trident, is the logo. And these guys had to go to Europe and the Pacific. They caught the tail end of World War II. I've been back to Europe with a 97th Division veteran. Had to cross the Rhine River, fight into Germany. They were there and said, okay, well, now you guys have to go to the Pacific once the war ended. What can you say about having seen both sides of the war there?
Well, it all started for me in December 1944. I turned 18, and on that day you had to sign up for the draft. January, I had my physical. Graduated from high school in February. March, I was in the Army, never been away from home in my life. So I went through basic at Camp Roberts into the 97th at San Luis Obispo. All of our training was Pacific. We made landings at San Nicolas Island, San Clemente Island, the Marine Base, and Oceanside. And we were Pacific bound until Hitler surrounded Bastogne. And as we heard many times after, grab your gear, we're moving. We went to Fort Dix and to Europe. By the time we got to Bastogne, as I like to say jokingly, Adolf heard I was coming, and he backed off. So we went through Holland and into Germany, across the Rhine, and into the Ruhr Pocket. That lasted 43 days. We had no change of clothes, no change of underwear, no hot food, a roof over our head 2 nights, and got shot at every day for $30 a month minus $9 for insurance. After we got to Dusseldorf, that was our project, I won the lottery. I got 2 days in Paris, not Paris, but on the French Riviera for R&R. But I heard those words again, grab your gear, we're moving. And they trucked us down toward the east. We were transferred into Patton's Third Army, and all the trucks stopped. Across the street was a big Olympic-sized pool. The engineers had got the heater going. We all had a bath and got new clean clothes. We were in hog heaven. The worst day we had, I remember none of the towns. I wasn't on a pleasure trip. We were kind of in a wooded area, and they brought up 5 tanks to lead us through this big open space the next day. And the tank, we had to go this way. The tanks had to go down like this and out. And the Germans knocked off all 5 tanks, and they sent us anyway. And everything was quiet until all of a sudden all hell broke loose. My next step was in a bomb crater, and I just dove in head first. That was probably 7:30 in the morning, and I didn't get out of there until dark. I was a brash young kid. I'd take my helmet off and see if I could see, and every time I'd peek up there, I'd get a burst around the mound. So they brought up some smoke later in the day, and my squad leader happened to be in there with me, and he went this way, and I was this way, and we went back. Only time we ever had to retreat, withdraw in our time there. Finally, to shorten the story, the war was over, and we had a company meeting. Good news, we're going home for 30 days, the month of July. Great. And a long, long pause, but we're going to North Carolina, Fort Bragg for a 6-week refresher course, and on to the Pacific for the invasion of Japan. So we had that thought in the back of our head. The whole month of July, we were home, and I got back to North Carolina the 3rd or 4th of August, and of course the 2 A-bombs were dropped there, and that ended that war. We had 2 weeks instead of 6. We were shipped to Seattle, spent 37 days on a freighter from Seattle to Yokohama, stopped at Hawaii and Philippines, Iwo Jima, got off the ship and checked Iwo Jima. And the one thing you remember on Iwo Jima is those 6,700 white crosses at the end of the runway. Wow. And then in Tokyo Bay, we were the 2nd ship to unload on Japanese soil, October 1945. So that was, I had 72 days at sea, and I was in the infantry.
Amen. I'll have some more questions for you in a second. Cletus Bailey here on the end. I got to join him for the, I think it might have been like the 77th anniversary of the Battle of the Bulge in Belgium. We drank a lot of beer in that house. What happens in Belgium stays in Belgium, all right?
Yeah.
So that's all we're going to say about that trip.
Yeah.
Now, what was it like going back to where you served in the Battle of the Bulge, and what was your role in the 84th Infantry Division?
But basically, I was just an ammo bearer. And I joined right at the tail end of the Battle of the Bulge. And, going back to where it all started out is when I got, little did I know when I got my draft notice, I was still in high school, but I got deferred until I finished, which I was glad of. And I wanted to be a flyboy. One of my brothers was. He was already stationed with the 8th Air Force in England. But actually, and when I went through the processing center, and the doctor was doing the examining, and I said, he designated me to be going to the infantry. And I told him, I said, you can't put me in the infantry. I got flat feet. But I think he was deaf. I ended up as a replacement in the 84. And so that ended. Next thing I know, I'm on a troop ship. And England first, to Le Havre in France and Carson Channel, and worked my way up to where I joined the 84th Infantry. they were just winding down the Battle of the Bulge. So fortunately, for myself, I missed that. And then actually, the next thing I know, I'm up on the Roller River at Lineage. That's where we made the, initial assault into Germany. We had to wait till the waters receded. All that area had been flooded, and that's where I crossed the Roller, and then, shortly thereafter, we got surprised. They were still some stiff defenses being put up, and we lost 4 or 5 men from my company K of the 333rd Regiment, and I remember the next village that we came to after we crossed the Roar was Hart, H-A-R-D-T, I think. And a friend of mine that I just got acquainted with, we kind of hunkered down to rest for a while, and he got killed the next day. So that's the way it went, because it was nearing the end of the war, and to lost, half a dozen men, at that point, it was bad. And anyhow, I served with the 84th until we met up with the Russians on the Elbe River. And with that said, I'm just glad to be anywhere.
I saved the best for last. This guy's going to be my new best friend here, Mr. Brown. Now, Mr. Brown, we don't know each other very well. I have a good friend named Marvin Gilmore up in Boston, and he was with the 758th Field Artillery Battalion, which was a segregated unit. Him and I went back to Utah Beach. He was one of the first black men to land on Utah Beach. And I took him to the Worth 11 Memorial in Belgium, which is the only monument dedicated solely to African Americans in World War II. For the 11 men from the 333rd Field Artillery Battalion, a segregated unit who were murdered by the SS during the Battle of the Bulge. And he'll be most likely the last black veteran to return to that monument ever. Unless you come with us in December, because I want to offer you to come to see it yourself. So talk it over. If you want to see that memorial, we'll happily take you to see it, so you can be one of the last veterans to go visit it. But that being said, you're someone who's seen this country evolve and change more than any of us here. From being in a segregated unit, from civil rights, to being today on this stage, most likely nearing 100 years old. How old are you?
I'm 98 now. I'll be 99 in about 3 weeks. No, 3 months. Not 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Yeah.
Now, we hear the term Red Ball Express a lot, and if it wasn't for the Red Ball Express, these guys to my left wouldn't have their ammunition, their medical aid, their supplies, their gasoline. Unfortunately, another one of the Red Ball Express was moving casualties to graveyards. Can you tell me about what you did with the Red Ball Express during the war?
Oh, yes, during the war, I kind of followed him. He was saying the same thing that he went through. We was driving a tractor trailer at that time, and mostly everyone was driving either gasoline, ammo, and it wasn't just all of the trucks. It was 200. When we left the state, we had, I think it was a company of 105. And so when we reached Europe, they doubled it. I think it was about 210. So what they've done, they broke us all up in a small unit. And I was the one that usually carried mostly gasoline. Some of the other trucks was carrying ammo. But my closest thing to the encounter that I have was that we supplied General Patton tanks. So we started out somewhere in Aachen, and we went right straight through like him. We went through France, we started in Aachen, Metz, Holland, went for Holland. I think the next move was after we left Belgium, we went to Holland, and then on into the Germany, to the Rhine. And that's why we crossed over into Germany off the Rhine River. And that's just about my story for that.
Now, delivering those tanks is a huge, huge undertaking. And those flatbed trucks had to be pretty big to haul those things, right?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Yes, it was.
What was it like driving through Germany with those trucks? Were these cities destroyed? Was there rubble?
Yes, it was. That was it. You know, that's why when they said we'd go back and remember certain things in there. So when I went through, and when our company went through, everything was just rubbish. Everything had been torn up. That's why I couldn't recognize a lot of the places that we have been, because it was all torn up. And I can vividly remember some of the things. You know, don't want to be harsh about it. It was a smell that I'll never forget. Never forget that smell. All the towns that we went through, you notice that someone had been buried somewhere under that rubbish. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So if they had some dog to sniff it out, I'm the dog now. Because it's something I'll never forget.
Right. Yeah.
Always.
I've heard that a lot from a lot of World War II veterans between dead cattle, dead horses, and
Yes.
of course, unfortunately, humans that these
That was
towns.
a smell that you'd never forget.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, Ed, I saw you waving your hand. Did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I'd like to tell the people out here a then and now story that they may find interesting, because what happened is probably the odds are very, very high that it would take place. On December 17th in 1944, which was actually the first day of the Battle of the Bulge, I was assigned to fly a mission to go over to look for Tiger tanks that were reported moving towards Bastogne. And fortunately, we saw some Tiger tanks in the wood. We went down, dropped our bombs, and came up off the flight. And I was immediately saw that there was a ME-109 shooting at my squadron commander, and then all of a sudden he turned and he was looking at me, and I saw his 20 millimeter blink, and the next thing I knew, I heard a pop, and I had black oil all over my windshield. My engine started chugging, and I immediately lost altitude. I called my squadron commander, told him I was hit, and he said, head towards 270. So I start towards 270, and I look to the right, and there's an ME-109, and I look to the left, and there's another ME-109. They circle behind me, and any pilot knows that if somebody comes behind you, they're going to shoot you. That's why they're going behind, because you can't fire at them. Well, they didn't shoot. They came up, flew escort me, took me back to the bomb line. They made a friendly gesture, peeled off, and went back to Germany, and I proceeded and fortunately was able to get back to my airfield. Well, the sequence of that is that 80 years later, last December, I had 2 years ago, I had the opportunity to meet the commander of the Tiger tanks that we bombed in Koblenz. I had a chance to meet him and talk 15 minutes with him, and he told me through our interpretation that the one thing the Tiger tanks were really afraid of were the P-47 Thunderbolts. The next year, I had a chance to meet the pilot that was in the same battle that I was in. One of my fellow buddies shot him down. One of his fellow buddies hit me. And during that battle, I lost one roommate and the man that I was flying wing to. and those two Americans crashed within 1 mile of where he crashed, and I was able to go with him back to see that airfield. He and I talked for 4 hours, and we started out as adversaries, and at the end, he shook my hand and he said, "We are now friends." He's 99 years old, and thanks to Paul Ursner, I think Paul's in the audience, he's the historian that got me in touch with Karl-Heinz Bossi, a Luftwaffe pilot in the same battle that I was in, and the odds of that happening are astronomical. He's alive, and I'm alive, so... That's it.
The end.
Now, Ed, I got to ask you, you had 2 roommates killed in the Battle of the Bulge.
Right.
And I think it was 2022 or maybe 2021, we found Ted Smith, your roommate, buried in Holland. It was the first time you ever saw his grave. Can you tell these men and women what it was like seeing his name again on that white cross for the first time, really?
We were in Holland, and we had been to St. Tron, Belgium, to my airfield, and then we got into the van, and Andy said, "We're gonna on our way home. We're gonna stop. I want you to see. I want to go in and see this cemetery." So we stopped, came to this American cemetery, and I had no idea why we were there. And so we got out of the van, and we start walking, and I'm the last one walking, and we go down the middle aisle, and all of a sudden I see Andy and all the other people turning left. So I turn left, and I start looking at crosses, and I'm walking cross, and another cross, and all of a sudden I looked at this one cross, and there's Theodore S. Smith, 48th Fighter Group, 493rd, killed in action January 1st, 1945. And that's like somebody hitting you with a knockout blow. I immediately got very emotional. And that Ted was my best friend in the 48th Fighter Group. He was one of my roommates. And the day he got shot down, he, on his descent to crashing, he told the people on that flight to tell his wife that this was it, and he thanked me for my friendship, and then he crashed. So when I saw that cross and where he's buried, that's a very difficult situation, believe me. But it's something I'll always, always remember.
Absolutely.
And God bless Ted Smith.
Mr. Shipe, is there anything you can tell these future military men and women about carrying the BAR? It's a weapon system they'll never carry. You carried it during the war. Did you like it?
Oh, I loved it. It weighed twice as much as the M1 rifle, but it rode comfortably. I even ditched my overcoat to carry more ammunition. I never wanted to run out of ammunition. And it had 2 speeds. You could make it sound like 2 different weapons. The only drawback, it had 20-round clips, and 30-round clips would have been great. But I had a belt, 2 bandoliers. I had a assistant that carried ammunition, and every morning they brought up K rations, ammunition, and we just loaded up every morning, and it was a great weapon. Really loved it.
Cletus, what did you carry during the war for a rifle?
Beg your pardon?
Did you carry the M1 Grand or did you carry the carbine?
Yes, I carried both. The M1 got
In each hand?
I traded it for a carbine.
You carried one in
actually-
each hand.
After we crossed the Roar River, there was a tanker that made a mistake, had going to check out something, and he left his Thompson machine gun on the tank, and I traded my M1 for that. It was a lot lighter, but I traded back later.
One more tidbit.
But most of the time, actually, we had 30 millimeter, 60 for mortars and 30 caliber machine guns. I was ammo carrier most of the time for the ammunition, and so it was interesting. I'd always enjoyed rifles. I was a pretty good shot in them, but I didn't do a lot of shooting. And, but I was just glad to survive. I missed several opportunities. I think if I, as big as some of these guys, I'd have never made it back across the field. I had to go. I think happened quite often, you know. We ran out of ammunition, and I made it there and back. And that sniper wasn't too good a shot. But, so it was more than exciting, and it was some great experiences. And after it ended up, later on I joined the Air Force. But my days in the infantry, I think I appreciated more. We had a lot of, like my band of brothers, and the camaraderie and stuff. So, but all said and done, you know, I did miss a few opportunities not being here, and I would have known you.
That's right. Bob, you were going to say about the weapon?
With the BAR, a rogue tank crossed our path one day, and we had a bazooka in our platoon. Where it came from, to this day, I don't know. But we knocked that tank out. And I was gung-ho, 19-year-old. I was the first one to the tank. When the lid opened, the officer came up. He's looking right down the barrel of my BAR. He had the greatest looking jacket on, fur-lined. So I took his jacket and took his Luger and cut the fur out of his jacket, and day by day, every 10 minutes, I sewed that in my jacket because I'd already given up my overcoat, and it was a lifesaver because I got some flak in my back from their. They had a 20 millimeter anti-aircraft weapon that they could shoot flat and it would explode over anybody prone on the ground. I got some flak in my back from that, kind of like backing into a cactus. It didn't really penetrate, but it stuck. So I thank that tank commander for his fur coat, because that saved a lot of bleeding. And it goes on and on and on. I'll end it right there.
Now, being in those trucks, did they give you what did they give you to protect yourself, Mr. Brown?
Well, we had the M1 and then that carbine. And that's what we carried. And I just want to answer to some of the questions that he said about carrying two guns and what have you. It made me think about when we was crossing the Atlantic, coming over. Oh, when the German submarines, they were chasing our ship. And they made us all go down deck, and they locked us all in. Said everybody put on their life vest. Not only did I put my life vest on, they had another little vest like an inner tube, like a rubber inner tube. I put that on too, so I had two different lifesavers.
You were going to float. Could you swim?
Huh?
Could you swim?
Not over that ocean, I could swim. but really, being knowing that, when they put us all down in the hole and locked us down, I didn't realize that once they blew that hole open, they weren't gonna open the door up there. We couldn't get out anyway, because we were just locked in. So I was prepared for all of that. I had my two belts on and everything.
That's awesome.
But I know that's it.
Let's do Q&A. Let's do questions. I'd love to see some questions from some of the military cadets as well. We're gonna have a microphone come up, and I see our first hand.
So who has questions for any of our panels? See the question right here.
Panel, you guys did a great job, and I have two questions, one for Mr. Brown and one for Ed. And Andrew, I also have interviewed Marvin Gilmore Jr. and heard his story, and this is for Mr. Brown. So you guys had a harrowing time driving the Red Ball Express, and some of that driving was done at nighttime. And Marvin mentioned that you didn't have full headlights, but they were cat's eyes, which increased the danger, obviously because of German snipers and the like. Tell me what it was like driving at night for the Red Ball Express, and then I'll ask Ed his question.
He was asking, what was it like to drive those trucks at night? Was there any type of techniques that you guys did?
Oh, yes. We drove what we called a blackout. We had the lights had something called cat eyes. You would follow that, each one, blacked out. We would all black out, no lights. So you would follow, every truck would follow the cat eye. If you get too far, the light, they had a way of knowing you was too far. The closer you get, you see, but not too close. But I really don't forget just about how it worked. But I know we had that particular way that how we had to travel
Yeah,
at night.
For those who don't know, a set of cat eyes is almost like an infrared that you can see really close up, but aircraft can't see it. People can't see it from far away, as to turn your headlights on and give away your position.
And that's one of the reasons why we had that. I did tell everyone while we were traveling at night like that during the cat eye, we also was attacked by one of the Germans' aircraft. And the reason why I'm here today, they hit my truck with a 20 millimeter and laid on a frame, and it never went off. Had it gone off, I wouldn't be here today. So that's my story.
And my next question is for Ed. Ed, you pointed out that the P-47 could take a lot of abuse. Could you briefly give us an example? How many missions did you fly? And give us one example of how it saved your life.
He said, how many missions did you fly? And that you mentioned how the P-47 could take a lot of abuse.
Yeah.
And could you elaborate on that?
I flew 65 missions, and about the abuse that of P-47, I can tell you almost every mission we flew, we did dive bombing and strafing supporting the 9th Army, and almost every mission we flew, we came back with small arms bullet holes in the plane. I can remember one mission in the early December where we skip bombed a Germans from 300 feet, and at the end of the mission, my crew chief took me around and showed me the plane, and I had 35 small arms bullet holes in my plane, and I never knew the plane had been hit. That's how good that P-47 was in taking abuse.
Any other questions?
Yeah, we have a cadet, maybe 3 rows in.
Greg?
I'd love for you to see my rifle.
I'm a Shimmer 4th Class Green, and my question to you was, hold on 1 second. Mr. Brown and Mr. Ed, can you all speak on like the effect the near-death experience had on you all? Like, did it make you more frightened to go back into battle, or was it like a new sense of motivation to go back and fight for your country?
I think that's a great question also for Ed, because Ed had a really bad near-death experience, and then he had to go back up in the air just a week later. And you touched on this with me. What was it like having that near-death experience and knowing you had to go back up into the sky after you were almost shot down?
The day that I got hit very badly, I lost 2 roommates, and so when we finished our briefing, my squadron commander said, I want you to report tomorrow morning at 7:30. You and I are going on a mission because you're going back up in that airplane. If you don't go up with me tomorrow morning, you will never fly again, I can tell you that, because you'll have trouble getting into the aircraft. And he was so right. The next morning when I got up and went with him, we made a special mission just to get acclimated. And I thank him for doing that, because that gave me the ability to go back and continue what I was supposed to do. But when you lose 2 roommates in 1 week, it's pretty difficult to know every time you're going to go up that it may be you the next one.
Be the next.